recording now. And yes, Stephen, all for you.
Well, thank you everyone for joining. I think it is fantastic to get to know you a little bit more and to share a little bit of what I have been doing in terms of this specific topic here in the region. Um, uh, First of all, I think it will be great if we, and please just feel free to interact at any time. I'll give a summary of it, but if you have any questions or thoughts or anything, just please um, raise your hands and we will go there. Um, I think just to give you a little bit of my background and why I am working on this topic. I studied international relations and international business. That's my background. Like many of you probably are more into the social sciences, and I had the opportunity to join this firm 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago now, where I ended up working in a startup within the organization that was trying to develop a lot of capabilities in terms of analytics and big data and in general in the tech world, you know. And so I started by understanding a lot of the things that we needed to do for the specific business and then for the type of talent we needed. And so I had, since it was a startup, I had the opportunity to work in different areas within the organization. And one of those, actually, I had to just go out and start reaching out to the universities here in Costa Rica because we were looking for certain type of talent, and so I started, this interaction with people outside the firm as well, and it just caught my attention, like all of these new concepts, all of these interesting ways in how technology interacts in different forms and in different spectrums of life. And so I continue building this relationship with a lot of people, leaders in the academia, and also in just in society in general related to technology. And I started to realizing the impact that also is having in terms of our society, like in the economic side of it, in the political side of it, and in general in the different situations we're going through. And so beyond my job and how I had to learn about this because of my job, I decided I wanted to get more involved in it. And so for the last 5 years, I have to say, I have been involved in different initiatives, first locally and then regionally, related to how we can get more people trained and get skills and be prepared for the changes that are coming in terms of that are here in terms of, of the way we work and the different type of jobs that are showing up. And also we started and I am very happy about this because in Costa Rica we had this tendency of being very centralized in our capital city in terms of these type of opportunities as well. And so I started pushing and using all of my possibilities from the office and outside to develop certain activities that could go, outside of, like, in the rural areas, to give people from the rural areas opportunities to understand, to get training, to be involved in this topic. And also um, one of the other things that was uh, related to this topic is the fact that we don't have a lot of women that have the capabilities and that are involved in the tech world, and so that was having a huge impact in terms of again, job opportunities, job wages for women, and also in terms of leadership, because a lot of the leadership also needs these capabilities, right? Like at least in the private sector right now, like a lot of leadership related to tech needs the skills, this type of skills, and there were not a lot of women in that. And so I think one of the big hits that we started doing a few years ago is that I paired up with this university and I told them like I want to do an event at a high level event where we can actually let women start discussing this. And so I just started with the idea that I was going to do this meetup because I started doing this type of activities, just getting people knowledgeable in the different topics of technology, and I will bring them together and I will ask for a university to let me use one of their classes or uh, their facilities to do this. And and so we started doing this for free, like for people to who wanted to learn about tech in general. We will do this, and then I just told this university I want to do something specifically for women, and we thought, okay, let's think of about 50 women who can come and do that. And I was like, you know what, I want to inspire them, so I'm gonna invite like these key personalities from the country and see if one of them would like to join us. And so I invited the um, the European Union ambassador in Costa Rica, because he's also very involved here in the region in that topic. I invited our Secretary of Technology, which at that point was a woman. Invited our Vice President at that moment, who she's a woman too, and um, and the UNESCO regional representative and so I thought, one of them is going to say yes, maybe. Um, so that will elevate the participation of people and stuff. And in the end, the four of them said yes, that they will help me. And so it just turned from a very, very little event to a humongous event of like 500 women coming and listening to all these very inspirational leaders in terms of technology and how that impacts the different areas of life. And so that was like a breakthrough in terms of my involvement in the topic and the kind of things that we realize that we can do, like um, if you have a will, you can do a lot of things. And I just again remember that because of that event. And so I started pushing really hard about how we need to discuss more of this in terms of all of the different areas that has an impact on. And after that, we have had a lot of events. Last Saturday, we held an event held an event on for LATAM, for the whole LATAM. We call it LATAM Talks, and it was a digital event, and we had like 400 people joining each of the sessions, and there were like 8 sessions throughout the day. And so I mean, all of this just to let you know that there's a lot of people who want to talk about this, and but not only in terms of, oh, okay, this is gonna get me a job and this is gonna get me a well-paid job, in terms of how this is again impacting all the different areas of life. And as part of that process and involvement, I started also studying and reading a little bit about what is it at another level, what are the impacts that we're seeing of technology in our society. And so I started reading about the impact that this is in general having about in terms of how we have a structure our society at a more systemic way, and how we have developed all this function functionality of how we work as a society from the classic thinkers of political science and philosophy, and how we live now under a social contract, right? And but how we have come now to a point where technology it's has caused a break, a crack on that structure, and how there is a need for us to review it. And there are many symptoms that we see around the world in terms of that, but there are very also there are also situations that let us know of that. And just to give you an example of that, I don't know if you remember all of the issues with, of course you do, with Cambridge Analytica, and then how Mark Zuckerberg was involved in all of that, and how he was called to Congress to testify about this, and how he just didn't care. Like in his whole speech, you can tell, and in his answers, well, you notice two things. You notice that definitely the people who are ruling our world, especially like older people who are ruling our world, they are having a really hard time understanding how all of this functions. And we all are, because there are so many differences in way how technology is showing up: IoT, analytics, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and all of that. And the way they interact is exponential, and it is huge, and it is not sometimes easy to comprehend. And so we we see like the gap between the public servants and the people who have become like this new elite, right, who own a lot of, not only the companies that are high tech, but also the conversation in terms of that. And so you realize that is getting to a point where our uh, where our social contract is being questioned by this disruption in terms of what is the role of the state, for example. What is the importance of having diversity in terms of this specific spectrum, and how we had already structured this centrality of trade and open markets in our economy, and how they were functioning in a, let's say, a healthy way because of this social contract. And also, and more importantly and more impactful, the value of democracy, like how democracy is part of that social contract that we work on. And so we need to see also how this platform, this technology platform, has launched a lot of populists that advocate for an agenda of upending these decades of all consensus about these areas that I'm mentioning, right? The role of the state in general, and the value of democracy. And another problem we have with the technology being so exponential is the fact that it creates a lot of opportunities for people to speak up, and a lot of the people who are speaking up are people bringing fake news. And we see it in our leaders, right? And how they just lie in front of TV, like Trump lies, and many of the leaders in Europe and Latin America lie in front of TV, and people see it instantly around the world. And the percentage of people who actually do the fact check behind that, it's very little, and that is eroding, the consensus again of how this society is structured and how it functions. And then another big topic that it is dynamite, as Manuel Muniz says it, and I'll mention a little bit more about him, because I've been inspired by what he's been doing. And I don't know if you know him, but he is a leader in Spain who is discussing a lot about the need for a digital social contract. And I think we actually should get in contact with him. I could probably talk to him and see if he will be interested on having a more in-depth conversation about this. But one of the other things that we have seen in nowadays is our society got to, in the history of humankind, it got to an exponential way of developing certain things. And one of those is how technology is used and how it impacts, right? It just, in the last 10 years, it just got so exponential that it is insane, the 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 speed in how it goes around the world. But the problem with that is that is not necessarily having an impact in terms of wages, in terms of how people is paid for the job they do. And so there's a lot of discontent in the middle classes and in general of people who think that automation of jobs are actually not giving them the opportunity to earn what they deserve or to have the opportunity to access to certain jobs. And the statistics of automation of jobs says that we can actually automate in the last 10 or 15 years, we can automate 50% of the jobs that we have. And the problem with that is that a lot of people are saying, you don't have to be so pessimist, because every time that happens, there's new jobs who come to happen, replacing these other jobs because of automation. Yes, that's a reality, but the issue with that is that for all of those new jobs that are coming, like, people need these skills, like technological skills. And one of the things that we have realized in Latin America, and I know it's the same everywhere around the world, is that the people who are getting the education and getting the skills to be ready for this digital world, those people are not necessarily the ones that need it the most. So it's not the people uh, in the rural areas. It's not the people who their economies is not, robust as many other people, and it is not the women as well. And so that also creates a huge imbalance in terms of how we can react and how we can um, be prepared for all of this automation, and how we also need to consider that part in terms of how our society is being structured, because right now a lot of the wealth that comes out of technology is not being distributed again in wages for people, but it is actually going towards the investors, that usually those investors and the ones that are getting the most wealth of all of this are the ones who have capabilities like robots or automated jobs already, or algorithms that do a lot of jobs. And and so it is concentrating wealth in just a few people, and these people are also defying and bringing a lot of tension in terms of how our society it's functioning, or functions as we traditionally know it, from the traditional social contract we have it structured in. And so it could be argued that technological and social transformation um, has been so impacted by this trend, that we need to get serious about getting a discussion of revising how is it that we want to restructure our society from now on, and um, with this specific topic being in the middle of this. Um, I think that the fracture also of the technology in how the social contract used to function, and why we need to revise it is it's noticeable in the rise of economic uncertainty, like, and how people react to that, and how they feel frustrated, and how they go and vote for the first populist that comes in, hoping that this person is actually gonna do something about it, but they can't, because this goes beyond them. Even if they want it, they can't, because it goes beyond them. And the other fracture in our social contract is brought to technology, which at certain point is not necessarily only a bad situation, but something that helps us to reflect is that right now there is a sense of lack of real political representation doing what they are called to do. And that is noticeable, because we all can now have access to what's going on and what they're doing and how they are reacting. The political leaders. And so what we are seeing is that they're failing, and they're failing a lot because of populism, and because of they're just not ready to um, to face this new reality, this new digital reality. And so, and then another, of course, another old threat or that fractures the social contract is the new threats that we see in terms of cybersecurity, you know, and how our data is manipulated, and how democracies or democratic systems are manipulated, and in general how our security is manipulated because of that, and how we all who want to fight and who usually were like um, a check and a balance in those topics are also being threatened by that, right? And how many journalists and activists are persecuted because of leaders having this access and having these capabilities to go after people. I was I don't know if you saw it, but the prince of Saudi Arabia, he got some technology that it was actually intent for him to have uh, through facial recognition opportunities to develop his commerce, and what were the trends and how people were buying things, or what kind of things they were buying and everything. That was how the technology was intended for. But then he started using it to tracking people who were protesting against him, and then arresting them, and who knows what happened, you know, after that. And we have seen it in many other situations, and we see it right now in China as well, you know, and how they they are not only seeing what's going on in their country, but outside their country, and who oppose them, and how they can easily track them back because of technology. Um,
If I can, sorry,
yeah.
if I can just jump on here, like, yeah, I think
Yes.
exactly, like, I think that and then we can also go on like Clara's questions, but like one thing that you know, I'm very conflicted is both on a side, technology is great, because I think that if you take you know, for example, now what's happening in Hong Kong, I think that you know, if we weren't able to see what was going on, I mean, I think technology is a great way to amplify some issues. And then of course I think that, like, you know, one thing that you said at the beginning is like striking the right balance, right, between
Mm-hmm.
amplifying these issues and then everything else that is going on. And you mentioned you know, you just gave the example of Cambridge Analytica, and then, you know, the way that a lot of like this superpower technology feel entitled in kind of like running our societies, right? um
Mm-hmm.
which, but I think exactly, like, it is, you know, I think I personally think that we're still in a process of kind of like finding that balance between, you know, giving access to everyone to this basic, to the world, because through your phone you have access to the world, but also ensuring that exactly it doesn't become like a big brother in your life,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. And then uh, sorry, Anita, were you saying
No, no,
something?
no, no. Sorry, finish. Sorry, I didn't
No,
want to.
it was like a completely different point, because then I was going to say about you know, how a lot of jobs are getting automation, and I do understand, like, I was on the same, you know, idea of a lot of people in the sense of like, okay, you know, we're going to get a lot of jobs automated, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, what's going to happen after? But I think you know, uh, the comment that Ziad put about imbalance existing in the short run, I do believe that, you know, that imbalance between people losing their jobs and being replacing by you know, robots at some point, those same people. And I think that here you said exactly the right thing about, it's the training is not provided for those people that will lose their job. It's provided for, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the big dogs, but then for
Mm-hmm.
those people that would be replaced,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to get the training to then go and do those new jobs. And I think that that's where the problem is. Like, I came to realize that, you know, we will get replaced in a lot of places by robots, but right now I don't think that anymore is the problem. I think that the problem is that those that will have to get new jobs that don't exist right now, are not going to be the ones that, that are getting trained. So I just wanted to share my my thoughts.
Yeah, on that is when you were talking, I think there are two concurring issues that I really see as striking. Because yes, one is the one that we know we have to learn how to use the technology that we have, and the people who actually know how to use it are. I mean, it's increasing, but then there's always the next level. So, and the next level is always less people. So, I mean, on one side, we have to learn how to use technology. And so we have to be educated to live a digital life. And this is not the case everywhere in the world at all. But there's also the second big issue that is exactly the democratic value of all, like of yes, social media, but of like digital life in general. Because I think we're slow. I mean, we got excited about, let's say, the internet and everything, but slowly and slowly we're realizing that we're human beings holding personal data, and our personal data are itself a good that we have to safeguard. And it's a bit tricky because the whole narrative of social media, especially, is they're the most democratic tool and they connect the world and everything. But I mean, if you think a YouTuber in the States will always be paid 10 times more than one in Italy, just think about what would happen in the Philippines or in lower countries. So I mean, it's democratic, but how much? I mean, it's a whole system that is way more complex than everyone can express and have the same visibility. And I mean, yeah, Donald Trump, even if he were in the president, he would have like 100 times more the visibility than I don't know, even Jacinda Ardern. So I don't know, and it's and in either way, it's in like democratic countries, blah blah blah. So think what could I mean, when the divide is even bigger and we're talking about underdeveloped countries or countries that have way less of a voice.
And that you mentioned,
Steven, I can't hear you, but I don't know. Okay. Yeah, now yes.
No.
So
no.
I think that no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now yes.
One is
no. Technology, great when it works.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see if we can do it here. So what I was mentioning is Anita, I mean, bottom line, and she mentioned it there, bottom line, the fracture of why technology it's instead of helping us, maybe causing a lot of more fracture, it's because of inequality. It's because of inequality in terms of access to have the training, in terms of access to have wages that reflect, the impact of how technology is it's doing something for the society, and also in just the capacity of having a discussion at that level where technology is it's a central topic, and that and so I think that that is the reasoning why we need to, number one, get, and when I say we, I mean all of the people who are activists or all of the people who are in this type of initiatives, number one, we need to get trained. We need to be ready to have the discussion, to understand the topics more and more, and we need to be involved in these communities, in these tech communities more, because on one hand, they need it and they want it. Like I have seen it with all of the engineers that I talked now, you know, like they, because of the way their minds are, it's a structure because of the education they got. There's a lot of things that are related to the impact that technology is having that they don't understand, or they just don't know, or they don't know how to, or they understand it, but they don't know how they can put it together. And so I have seen a really good reaction of a lot of these communities, uh, of having people like us who are not necessarily from that world, but that can help them communicate a lot of the things and also understand a lot of the things that are happening. And so they also bring their knowledge to help shape a better dialogue, you know, and how this actually can be used for a better use. Um, I think um, and because of our training, then we can help design the better and more effective education system. We can also help them to and help the conversation to strengthening, you know, the different areas that come around the impact of technology, such as access, such as again the wages, and such as gender equality, I'm sorry, in as part of this. um, I think that we and this movement, I think we should get a lot of allies and get very serious about how we can bring more people from that world to to be part of this, and for us to help them be part of this. There are some specific questions. I don't know if we want to go there, or if you guys have more thoughts about this.
No, the one thing that I was gonna say is that I am, you know, I agree with you when you said that we need to get more more in touch with technology, because as you said, like whilst we use it every day, there are a lot of things that could help us, like could really help us improving, for example, even what we're doing, but could also, as a general topic, I think that one thing that Anita said about technology being very, again, not balanced between those that can have it and those that can't have it. I remember in another community chat we talked about this in the side of education. So how like technology has been of great use now during COVID-19, where kids were stuck at school, kids were stuck at home and had to continue going to school somehow. But then again, I think actually, Anita, you made this point about how, again, that was like another level of unfairness between those that can afford it. So like, even myself, I have a laptop, I have two phones, I have an iPad, I'm totally fine, compared to those who can't afford it. And even society as whole, it's not that governments have thought about those that couldn't afford it. So those who had like 3 kids and 1 laptop, how does that work? And again, I think that I genuinely believe that technology is such a great instrument, and we can use it so well to do so many things. And again, I bring here the example of Hong Kong, but just because I think that it's such a strong example on how, if it wasn't for technology, we probably would be completely cut out.
Yes.
On this topic. But again, I think that I don't think that governments are even thinking about the impact that technology can have. And again, I think it brings in so many aspects, it brings another level of unfairness and inequality between those that can afford it and those that can't, when you link it to like a lot of topics, and I bring it back here about education, but it's because it has been proven in it was like there were many studies that came out of this 3 months. And I'm not talking about countries that are already there are developing countries. I'm talking about developed countries, that even those in this context, technology made the gap between those that could afford it and those that couldn't even bigger. But I think that when you can afford it, you don't even think about this.
Totally. I always think of this thing because a friend of mine, a flatmate of mine has her dad who is a teacher in France. So I wouldn't really consider it an underdeveloped country. Yet there were people that were, and they're like 7-year-olds, so they don't have a phone on their own, they don't have a computer nor anything, and some of the kids were taking classes from their parents' phones. So that doesn't, to me, that is mind blowing how someone can ever learn from a phone already. It would be annoying, especially if I'm like learning how to spell words or something like that. So, and this was in France. So to me, it terrifies me to just think what could happen in countries that are not France, Italy, Europe, whatever, and but we're more underdeveloped, let's say.
You I recommend you to read or
We couldn't hear you.
Yuval Noah Harari. I don't know if you have ever heard him or read him, but one of the things that he mentioned about the disruption of technology and the impact on society is that with the Industrial Revolution, we had a new class, and it was the proletariat, right? And then with this digital revolution we're in right now, he says that there is a new class that is going to get to be the result of this, and that is the class of the unemployable. And that unemployable people is these people you're mentioning, the people who don't have, even in developed countries, who don't have the same access to technology. And so the impact that can have in the stability of our society in general around the world, it is a huge threat. And it is something that we need to think of and find opportunities to reduce. And for that, one of the first things I think we also need to do is to let our leaders understand how technology works. Like here in Costa Rica, I see it like with the Minister of Science and Technology, we have tell them like the importance of this ministry or this to be transversal to all of the topics and to all of the other institutions we have. And they just don't get it yet, Mm-hmm.
I think I read the same part in, I believe it was this Yuval Harari's second book, the one about Homo Deus, where he talks about that. And what I thought was interesting was that he mentioned that knowing that like mass automation is going to create this class of unemployable people, what we need to do now is create a system where still everybody's basic needs are met, and in a way that is not connected to their the value they create in their jobs. That's why I also mentioned a universal basic income earlier, is because I think, of course, that's it's hard to implement right away, and I think in the transition period there's going to be many problems. But I think if we look at the long-term perspective, if we're going to live in a world where most of the value is created without the manpower that used to be needed to create the kind of value in the past, we have to think about a way how still everyone's needs are being met.
Yes.
And if we create a system for that now, hopefully we can actually make use of and I think it could be great for everyone if we all had to work less, but still we could afford to live a life where our needs are met and where we can use our time to maybe explore things that are not met, attached to just paying the bills at the end of the month. I think that could be a huge perspective for something great, but we have to think about it now, we have to talk about it now, and we have to implement a system where nobody gets left behind.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, Clara. I think that is the conversation that needs to happen in terms of giving people the opportunity to have their basic needs covered. If technology, if automation is not going to redistribute the wages on the work that people can do, then we need to find another way to have that stability, because that is actually one of the main reasons why we're having this disruption. And so if we need to explore that, and if that can actually happen, I think that's something that we definitely need to explore. And I think it is. I actually think it is a good idea. It is a fair idea. It is.
Steven, I don't know if it's just me, but I hear you a bit far away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. At certain time in the morning, my connection. See, that's another issue. Accessibility to technology and how we can use it. But anyways, I think for me, I think that the main message that I want to share with you guys in terms of this topic is, number one, let's develop the skills. Number two, let's get involved with these other people. Sometimes we don't get involved because we're not used to. We're used to talk to our people, like the other social science people and people who are doing this kind of things. But if you explore their worlds, you will find a huge opportunity of using, if you don't have them, using their skills to help all of us to create a better opportunity of impacting. And I think that projects like this, like now, for me, are so important in these new realities that we're having, because it is getting all of us connected in the different regions of the world. But in this connection, we need to include all these techie people who might not be very well at speaking up in these other topics that we do it currently.
Yeah, no, the one thing that you said, and it's something that we always talk about with Andrea and Colom, is the fact that we can't stay in our bubble, in the sense that the more you talk about, and this is for anything really, the more you talk about with people that have your opinion, the more like you're gonna make your opinion the same, but the more like you're questioned about other things, and the more people push you almost to like the opposite. But sometimes it's also good to go to the opposite, to question like your opinion and your thoughts, and I think that what you said about, we can't, even as a movement, we can't stay in this bubble, because per se we're trying to do something really different. So we can't stay in the activism or campaign bubble as everyone has always been, because we're not going to get anywhere. People have already tried. We're bringing something different. So I think that this is something that we always try to keep in mind. But even like really minimal things. None of us three is a tech person, and sometimes like we do things. I'm not saying that we write stuff down on paper, but we're like very close to that level. And sometimes it takes just to come out of your bubble and like talk to someone that understands, you know, even computers better, to understand that we're doing something that could have been done in 20 minutes rather than 3 days. And I think that that goes even with our campaigns and the topics that we take into consideration and the ways we, you know, we build campaigns. And so this is, I think it's really important about, you know, coming out a bit of our bubble, because I think that we're not going to progress hugely if we do that. And I think that, you know, even doing events like this one, I personally, you know, technology is not a topic that it's not my strength, but I think even at the individual level, we need to learn more about it, and we need to like also, you know, have our opinion questioned, because otherwise we're all gonna have always the same opinions.
Yeah, that's something. Sorry.
Go ahead.
That's something that I wanted to say even before, that it was reconnecting to the democracy of social media too. The point is that it's all very democratic, but then given of all the algorithms, you tend to be in your echo chamber, in your political echo chamber, and actually this is and that's the first thing that I thought when I read the title of this community chat as well, because to me that is the most the thing that is hampering democracy more than everything, is that by bringing a lot of online, it's like we're a part of the shit storms that sometimes are scattered just because someone is saying something that you disagree with, and but also I think the fact that it's all digital takes the element of dialogue out of a sort of conversation that you're trying to have, and that's why you tend to go to the people that think more like you, and so that you don't have to engage. And every time, and for example, it's silly, but when I was 17, I went to California, and I was staying with a host dad and a host mom, blah blah blah, and I kept in touch with them. But now I'm realizing via Facebook that my host dad is becoming more and more extremist, and I'm having a hard time to engage with him. And it's someone I've lived with for 7 months. So I mean, and sometimes I personally find I struggle with the fact that I want to reply to him, but I also do wanna. I'm not good at engaging on social media. I hardly do it, in all honesty. I'm more of a people person, let's say like that. But at the same time, I also think that if I don't reply, of course, in a nice manner, he's just gonna become more and more extremist. And so it's better maybe to try and get a shitstorm as a reply than not to try at all.
Yeah, and you know, just to conclude, unless like anyone else wants to say something, but I think that, you know, this is a topic, or at least for me, you know, I really like the connection between technology or digitalization and democracy. And I think that this is really a topic that we should explore more, and even in the next community chat, because I've seen it, even especially with myself, with a topic that I'm not very familiar with, I always tend to like get it back to the things that I know. Well, I think that, for example, I don't know much about how like the really big impact that you know, digitalization is having in a lot of countries, in terms of like even like, you know, their democracy and their society. And I think that this is really important, and especially when considering you know, you at the beginning you mentioned Saudi Arabia, you know, the UAE. It's another country that you know, those are, I think those are two examples of countries that are you know, very technological in the way that they use like you know, cameras and tracing and things like that. And you know, there's always the argument that they made about, yeah, you've been watched the whole time, but these are very safe countries. So what do you want? Like, what's you know, what's the thing that you want to get? And this is something that I find super interesting. But I just feel, as a topic, like especially for this first conversation, I always bring it back to things that I know. But I think that this is something that we should discuss much more, both in terms of you know, community chat, but I think it would be also interesting to do an event with someone that knows about digitalization and democracy. I'm saying democracy in particular because it links back to our next campaign, the Hong Kong one. So I think it's a topic that's also really interesting for people like me that are more on the social bubble rather than the tech bubble. But I think it's you know, thank you, Stephen, for bringing it up, because I find it really interesting, and we should definitely do more community chats like this that are a bit outside our bubble, and because I think it's really important.
How about this? I'll send you a couple of links with some videos and some text that you can read about this, so we can, you know, maybe later on even create like a little group or something that discuss this.
Yeah, for sure.
And the different areas that we could cover, and why we just don't. You might say no because right now he's serving as a diplomat for Spain, but maybe Manuel Nunes will be. I think he will be a perfect speaker for these two topics together. You know, technology and the impact on democracy and in general of how our society is structured.
Definitely. And definitely, if you can share the links, what I would suggest, if you want to share them in the forum, so that everyone who is here now, but also those that were not able to join, can check it out. And then, as I said, like this, I'm going to put this on our private playlist on YouTube, so people that couldn't watch it, they can watch it now. But I think it's yeah, please do share the links, because I think it would be really interesting to learn more and to read more about it. Great, perfect. Then unless anyone has any question, we'll let Steve go, because he has like another training in 3 minutes. But thank you so much for taking the time, and do please share the link, and then I will share this video on our YouTube channel soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening, and let's keep it up.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect.
I have a little hope in everyone here and in this movement. I just love it.
Oh, thank you. I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve. Bye, everyone.
Bye.